Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Lucid, and I'm once again joined by Sai.
Hey, this is Sai, and I'm once again joining Lucid for a live turn now.
Yes, as you can see in the bottom right of your display, this is the current turn. So that means we have caught up. We
Once again.
yeah, we took like a week break, and fortunately the game didn't go very fast, so we didn't have very far to catch up. Um, what I can go ahead and tell you, so that you don't click off the channel immediately, is that we have our first idle attack of this war. So that's going to be exciting. We'll start with the message here from TNG. A note on economics, you'll see us building a lot of cubes this turn. I think at this point, it's no secret that we're making a lot of cubes for one water gem each with our discount site. They will be one of the pillars of our late game armies. We'll soon have to be very careful with our ancestor vessels as they cannot endure flames from the sky spam. Our first Dragon Master will be starting work in a couple turns to make wyverns, which will be our bodyguard special forces.
Yeah, so the thing with wyverns is that they're size 5. So with just an enlarged army of giants, rather, they become size 6, and then they can block air elementals. And similar to Zizzes, which I think we've been talking about recently, they have built-in shock resistance. So you cast Army of Giants on your wyvern bodyguards, and you have a storm staff, and then suddenly your mage ball is protected.
Yeah. Even with Illwinter presumably coming, it's hard to beat 5 flying bodyguards who can endure Wrathful Skies just fine for 2 air gems with our discount site. After a cost setup of 21 nature and 8 fire, using hammer, turns, and our other discount sites. This is long range thinking, because this setup cost is going to get amortized out over a lot of turns. And right now, he's got his feet just deep in the fire. I love that he's thinking in the long term like this still.
Well, part of the thing is that even though the setup cost looks, like a lot of gems, it is actually turn efficient to do the what's it called, the Dragon Master thing
Right.
relatively soon. Just because you don't get you only get 2 wyverns per cast base, so the Dragon Master boost that you get is actually very significant just for the quantity. Like
Right.
even improving the gem efficiency is like almost a secondary factor in some ways.
Yeah. Okay. Message again from TNG. Also, yes, Pangaea is also sailing around with the pocket ship. Xibabla's attack interrupted our plans for.
Pangaea got theirs for free though, I believe.
Yeah, right. So it wasn't. They didn't have to pay up and come up with an idea. It was just coming up with a way to use an item they got for free. So less points
Although
awarded.
Pangaea should actually be getting a fairy queen and starting to make them themselves, in my opinion, just because they're starting to have enough of a coastal border where that mobility can actually really help them.
Yeah. Xibabla's attack interrupted our plans for cross-pond piracy using the raid order, but I expect we'll be back to those ambitions soon enough. P.S. It'd be really cool if there were a way to bring other commanders with the pocket ship, or a cheap version that lets you just take yourself and bodyguards. It's very logistically complicated figuring out how to have a mage corps and a sailing army travel to the same place without stressing about magic phase movement interruptions, causing the 2 parts of the army to be separated. That's fair. And then another message from TNG. Anyways, Xibabla doing a full attack on us, ... The wheels are starting to fall off the wagon. They offer peace for the provinces they raided this turn, plus the 2 forts, including the throne and the 4 air site. And the one between those. I was able to talk them into throwing 200 blood as part of the deal, and was willing to accept the offer with the revision that he gets to storm the throne of water, and whoever wins keeps it. But he rejected that deal, so it's war. Oh, man.
I actually like making those offers of let's have a battle, and then whoever wins that battle gets to, you basically bet a little bit on it. Like, oh, we need to make peace, but I really want to fight also. So this is a good way to decide who gets a slightly better terms if there's stuff that you are in disagreement about.
I like it too, but I feel like, first of all, this is a pretty good deal for Xibabla. I mean, 200 blood isn't a huge deal for them, and they get a lot of land and forts. I also like the deal for TNG.
Yeah, that said, I can see why Xibabla did not accept you have to blind storm.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to blind storm with 200 Ocelotls. That's too risky.
Right. Well, I mean, he could pink first and then do it, which is probably what he's going to do this turn. But I just feel like TNG, it was a good deal for both of them, and I feel like if he rejected this deal, it's too good of a deal for TNG to pass up on. And Xibabla, I can totally understand why they could take or leave this deal. So,
yeah, I think that Xibabla would have accepted it if not for the needing to kill whatever's in the Throne of Water and win.
right.
Because for all they know, TNG is just going to go all in on that defense and then, move the army out after they win the battle. Whereas for Xibabla, if TNG is all in on defending that, then you can just take all their other stuff.
Right. Now you've probably seen the garrison in the Throne of Water at 117 all game, but that garrison was mostly an effigy of war, and Xibabla has called our bluff. There's only 26 units, including a half dozen mages inside. But the backstabbers don't get to grab our best throne for free, so we're going to deploy our magic phase reserves and see if we have what it takes to fend off 200 Aussies backed by Firestorm. Well, Firestorm would mean he has Wailing Winds. That's actually the scary thing, not Firestorm.
Agreed, yeah.
I'm afraid the most likely outcome is just he pings and leapfrogs to another fort and takes that instead. But there's nothing to be done.
That would be his capital, actually.
Right.
Or 128.
TNG, you should have taken this deal, buddy. This was it's a painful deal, but it's the best deal you were going to get. Because, like he's threatening, like, just being completely eliminated from the game. That's what's at stake for him. Xibabla has a lot less at stake. All right.
Yeah. But I can also understand why giving the Throne of Water to Xibabla feels really bad. Ooh. Because putting +3 defense on all those Ocelotls is scary.
Yeah, that is really bad. But I think that's also a good way to start fear-mongering him. I think, like, in the meta state of the game, you've got to get people to fear-monger Xibabla and Gath if you're not Xibabla and Gath. I mean, there's a path to victory for... we did the path to victory for TNG, and it didn't necessarily involve Gath or Xibabla at all. It involved, Pan and Erythia.
But it did require keeping the Throne of Water.
Right. So I think now TNG's path to victory is you've got to fearmonger Xibabla. And...
yeah, get that throne back.
And honestly, Xibabla kind of puts the whole game on a clock. I mean, Gath does too, but not as much as Xibabla, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, actually. I think that Gath has... well, they do have pretty good Doom stacks with their Resist Bless and with the power of the Shadim in particular. But they lack the mobility that Xibabla has.
Yeah, and that's the real X factor.
And that mobility is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm afraid the most likely outcome is just... okay, we already said that. But there's nothing to be done about that possibility other than defend key locations, frantically research Enchantment 9, and wait for the diplomatic winds to shift. See, I think giving that Throne of Water to Xibabla helps shift the diplomatic winds. If we had a second Storm Staff...
and it gives him time for that Enchantment 9.
Right.
And it means he doesn't have to magic phase his army into there, so he can put it somewhere else.
Right. If we had a second Storm Staff and a Whip of Command in our inventory... we might have been in a position to defend 95 via Gateway, which would have been epic to defend, but we don't. Overall, we have like 2/3 the gear we would need due to the Earth Gem misfortune. I keep complaining about it, but it greatly limits our ability to take the fights we want. I think Ancestors for every turn that Earthblood Deepwell stays up. Okay. Thoughts on what he said?
I think it makes sense given like his psychological perspective of there's no reason to give this for free if we can actually win the battle. But I agree with you that he is making a mistake by trying to hold out for defending that throne.
Yeah.
Because selling it would also give him time to get that Eng 9 if he wants to turn around and fight Xibabla again anyways. But maybe he doesn't. Like, maybe he gets other people to fight Xibabla for him.
Right.
And spending all those gems and losing a good chunk of cubes, even if he does win that battle, also is going to be setting him back because it means that he's spending those resources fighting Xibabla and not fighting Pangaea or, for that matter, Agartha.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is he's talking here about defending 95, which is one of the forts that's about the other fort Xibabla popped.
Yeah, I don't think he can defend both.
Right.
It's absolutely one or the other.
Right. But the thing is once you give this fort up, then the terms are going to get worse for the next time you want to negotiate. Because Xibabla's going to go pop another fort. Right now, Xibabla doesn't know if you're going to, like, you could teleport stuff in that fort. So Xibabla actually gains value from getting peace because they're going to get this fort, which is risky, but they're going to get it for sure. And the second you, like, give this fort to them, you lose stuff in the you lose negotiating power. So.
Yeah.
From Betty High. Al here. The war versus Tianqi was never going to be the death. They're big and rich. They're not the existential scaling threat that Xibabla, Gath, and Arythea are, or frankly, that Pan is. They're hella rich, and they have a bunch of forts and the possibility of casting bounty.
Or Nexus, even.
Yeah. This coalition was Pan's idea mostly. We went along with it in part to serve our interest in getting some of the wars started that we're not going to be on the receiving end of, and also help ourselves to a bit of the land. TNG is sounding a ton of alarm bells about Xibabla's 400 Aussies, and those are indeed scary. So our diplomatic goal is to reassure TNG we aren't heading any further into his stuff. We know he's got some false army items around, but the hope is that the substantial part of what we see in Midgard, Celestials, is real, plus some cubes we can't see, and that we can reassure him enough that he gates that stuff to hold the Throne of Water and fight the Aussies. We don't formally want peace with him, so that's good. So that means he's already told people, hey guys, you're making me give this throne to Xibabla, and that's probably not a good idea for everybody who's not Xibabla. We don't formally want peace with him this turn, since we want to keep some bona fides with Pan and peace together. We're thinking that Pan may want to fight one battle and then peace, and we maintain our bona fides with Pan and Xibabla. We can then pivot into the next war, either eating Agartha or a coalition against Xibabla and Gath. Yeah, this would be... The Agartha play is a great play for Vedheim.
Yeah, and it should be pretty easy for him just based on the tech disadvantage.
Right. So that would be great, and Vedheim doesn't really have to worry about getting bigger at this point, I don't think. I mean, they don't have to worry about being too big. You can't see it, but we have a ton more stealth stuff in the TNG theaters. A few mages, a white thug, and maybe 80-ish berserkers and a bunch of rim Veti. Oh, and a bunch of dim Veti, many of them with bottles. We're prepared to fight TNG, especially over those death gems, but don't particularly want to and would rather peace. So Vedheim is sending peaceful noises to TNG, and he only wants, it looks like, the land he's already taken.
Yeah, and I mean, given what he's talking about with the army stuff that he's looking at, I don't think that he's planning on making a play for Midgard himself, but he might want to take 83.
Right.
Just because that gives them a nice clean border, and it gives Vedheim a fort on the border, which would slow down any sort of counter push coming from TNG, or even a push coming in north or south from Pangaea.
Yeah. Okay, a message has arrived from Vedheim. We're also prepared to put up Illwinter as soon as Eyes of God drops. Kurt's Diplo notes, we want TNG to shrink to be about as big as us or Pan. Well, that's already accomplished. But
he's already much smaller now.
Yeah. But to use the armies he's been accumulating to fight someone else in the process. We want the next nation. There's also TNG is showing a lot more mental fortitude, in my opinion, than the Arco player who just gave up the will to fight and dissolved. And you're kind of banking on TNG to show mental fortitude when you're like, oh, we want to 4v1 him, but him to use his armies to diligently fight our enemies for us. It's like some players are just going to give up and then give a bunch of land to the people you don't want them to give land to and say, fuck you, So anyway.
I will say, though, that there is something to be said for knowing the players involved. And we know that the TNG player does have that fortitude.
Yeah.
So Owl isn't making a big bet on that. I think that's a very reasonable assumption.
Right.
That the TNG is actually going to fight it out.
That's true. We want the next nation out to be one of the hyperscalers, Xibabla, Gath, or Arythea, which will give us a better balanced endgame. We also want Illwinter to go up without Diplo issues. But it sounds like he's wanting this, but it's not very clear what he's doing about it other than maybe not trying to kill TNG. But so we'll see.
He is pushing Pangaea to peace out at the same time as he is. That's what he was talking about in the last message about preserving bona fides, where Pan just wants to win one battle, grab some loot, and then peace out themselves.
Okay. The main reason to peace out with TNG is if he gets divided up, half goes to the hyperscalers, who are then ahead of us. Xibabla will be hard to beat with positive Aussies and sharpness, even if we get demonic cleansing. Arythea is set up for the Pelagia Wish Nexus endgame already, we're pretty sure. We want to keep friendly relations with TNG, so he'll help keep the hyperscalers in check. We're worried that TNG will give up the Throne of Water to Xibabla to force the anti-Xibabla coalition. which I think is actually the right TNG move. But it looks like but it looks like this won't happen. Kurt's suggestion, if TNG is telling the truth, is they're headed to fight to the death with TNG. Okay.
Or at least, yeah. So TNG had been basically inciting Xibabla to try to storm that throne with that bet thing.
Right.
But I think that actually gave Xibabla the intel that they are in fact going to be trying to defend that throne, which means that they're most likely not going to do a blind storm.
Yeah. So that may have actually worked against TNG. It might have been good if come back to this. If TNG knew that the deal was going to break because Xibabla didn't want to he didn't want to have a battle for the throne, then it might have been good if TNG came up with some other reason to try to obfuscate why the deal was falling through.
I mean, honestly, he just didn't want to have to give up that throne.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
I think. But given that the way that the forts were popped and the actual just physical position of the territory, there wouldn't really be a way for the two of them to come to terms without Xibabla getting that throne, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Unless Xibabla just gets absolutely smashed and can't take it.
Yeah. All right. So Pangaea sending in so this is the Pangaean Idol of Sorcery, which is Astral 7, Death 6.
Grinder Mickey.
Right.
But it could also be doing a Soul Drain first. We'll have to actually see.
Right. Yeah, let's take a look at the gunboat diplomacy here. He's got a lot of pearls and he's got a lot of death gems.
Oh, there's Soul Drain. Love that spell.
So Soul Drain is up.
It's essentially a battlefield-wide
Soul Vortex.
Soul Vortex, yeah. It's not quite to that level. If I remember correctly, it doesn't hit all of the squares in the way that Vortex does. But, yeah.
So the question is he going to try to return with it? Because normally when you do Soul Drain, you don't do return.
Yeah, true. I think that in Pangaea's case, though, it's very risky to try to keep it here for the duration of the battle, just because they don't have the number of priests to call it back that someone like Veriheim might.
Yeah. So this is an interesting little trick that TNG's doing. They have this Rabbitfoot charm on their Fog Warrior caster. They might have it on a different caster too. They kind of mentioned this in the note last turn.
Yeah, they'd mentioned that they had a couple.
But
and that's huge, actually, because that prevents them from being interrupted.
Right. Because the risk is that you're trying to cast Fog Warriors, but then Bone Grinding hits you, you get interrupted, and it never goes off. So then the rest of the Bone Grindings keep hitting you. And Fog Warriors, of course, is the counter to Bone Grinding. So now what the hell is happening over here? Did we get him cursed? This guy is not cursed yet. But he's getting the shit knocked out of him.
Yeah, I think those are just high damage units. Does he have cold resistance on the idol?
Oh, he does, yeah. Another Bone Grinding.
Sure
yeah, his fatigue is fine, though. He's only at 35 fatigue.
And he has just enough pearls left for returning if he is planning on doing... Okay, yeah.
So it's kind of strange. The Soul Drain... Oh, and he got Will of Fates off here, so that's...
I think that the purpose of the Soul Drain was to do a little bit of extra damage, right? Because, it is magic damage. And to make sure that he is going to have enough fatigue to cast returning.
That's true, right? So that play that TNG was talking about with the Axe of Hate probably wouldn't have worked with Soul Drain up.
Yeah, because it just returns too much health and reinvigoration.
Right. So interesting, and it's hard to kill like that. I mean, let's watch this battle again. So the max health on this guy is okay. Well, the max health is 696. So he's still above max.
Yeah, and one of the downsides of using these size 6 flyers is that a thug can't get in.
Right. So he never got him below max health. So I don't think there was any way he was going to kill it. Did he curse it or anything?
He did give it some afflictions, though.
Okay, let's watch it one more time.
I saw that it got diseased, and I believe it got a couple other afflictions as well.
Now, disease won't do anything because it's inanimate.
Right. But it does show that he was taking significant damage.
Okay, I think this is the last one. Oh, man. Yeah. Wait, but it's not... Oh, it did get cursed. Okay, so that's sick. He got it cursed. This is a small victory. Lost an eye, chest wound, diseased. Just getting it cursed also makes you less want to use it. So
Yeah, I mean,
you're still going
in
to.
Pangaea's case, actually, it matters more as a global caster because that's the guy who would be putting up Nexus for you if you're going for that as a victory condition.
Right.
So it does become quite a bit more risky to use it just because you really don't want to get that guy muted or feeble-minded.
Or more importantly, Harmark. Harmark is the thing, especially if he's gonna, if the like, this is potentially what Pangaea is risking, is if he gets this thing Harmarked to hell, you can't really put up Nexus with this. It's kind of out. Because if the second you put up Nexus, somebody else is going to put up Astral Corruption, and then this guy's fucked.
And then your god gets eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's actually risking a lot by using him like this. And it doesn't seem like it, but, you know. And there's other things you can do. Like I think it's my Temp Gym, there's an item that has Astral Geyser built into it. So you could like Cloud Trapeze that in and then Astral Geyser him. And Astral Geyser does like severe horror marking. So there are some kind of cool plays you can do with that.
Yeah, or you can just cast that spell.
Right. Okay.
This is Agartha, Vulturing.
Not to miss out on a good coalition. But they're also, I don't think if Agartha gets another cap out of this, it doesn't have to be like, TNG's cap, but if they get like Midgard or something, that'll be pretty amazing. I like on one.
I do not see the other players letting them get Midgard. Vediheim's already in the way. Like, just geographically, they would have to take a Vedi province to get it.
Oh, God. Okay, I almost ruined this. Here we go. Okay. Get out your popcorn. It's been a while since I've said that.
Okay, so 2 things to point out before the fight starts, actually. So first of all, this is the army that the idol had jumped on. So we should check the gem reserves on TNG's side in order to make sure that they still have the stuff for their battlefield spells. But if they do, the mage setup seems to be very strongly TNG favored. Okay, so they do have their Fog Warriors caster.
I don't know what this guy cast before.
But yeah, he's only got 2 now.
Maybe this is Weapons of Sharpness.
Okay.
I mean, this looks like quickening. But yeah, there's just a huge variety of things from TNG. Probably Life After Death, Darkness.
And Darkness, yeah.
And these guys...
We'd seen him put up both of those.
Yeah.
We'd seen him put up Will of the Fates late, so I think that's the golem that's casting that. We'd seen Wailing Winds, and we'd seen, of course, Fog Warriors from the Communion. So he's definitely casting all of that. So on Pangaea's side, they should have Army of Gold/Lead,
right.
like one of the two, because he'd mentioned that he was getting Alt 9. So that's the big thing that he has going for him.
Also, this is more mages, right? I think this is a mage reinforcement. I don't think this is how many invaded last turn. I think this is more. This looks like 30-ish rather than 20-ish.
See, 5.
We can count afterwards. Maybe this is just me guessing. I haven't counted anything.
It doesn't look like that many.
Okay.
So this is a different army, first of all. But I don't think it's that many sages. I would guess it's like maybe 30 at the most.
Yeah, you're pretty right. I think it's 25. Yeah. Okay. What else do you... I agree with you. I kind of like... I mean,
yeah,
we gotta...
So I think that... Yeah, I honestly believe that TNG's army has the better script here, in that they're bringing the mages to cast the spells, whereas Pangaea is just bringing mages. So I definitely think that Pangaea is going to be able to do some damage here. But cubes with Will of the Fates and
Fog Warriors.
What is it? Fog Warriors, Mass Regen. They're
Quickening.
not going to go down easily. Yeah, and there's nothing really on Pangaea's side that's going to be killing things other than those mages. So he's strictly relying on things like Gift of Heaven and Enslave spam while going into someone who has both Will of the Fates and Life After Death up. So I don't think that TNG should lose any undead mages here, or any non-undead mages here.
Hopefully Will of the Fates goes up. I'm not sure. It's possible this golem was the caster. Hopefully he's got a different one.
Oh, yeah. If he's missing Will of the Fates, then Gift of Heaven could do quite a bit of damage. Yeah. But the other thing that I want to point out is that Pangaea's side does not have Evo bait, and TNG's side does.
Right.
So on TNG's side, the casters that are doing evocation are most likely going to be prioritizing the Zizzes and Behemoths that are going to be running forward.
Yeah, and if those fly
Which-
right in here, the casting AI won't factor in the enforced inaccuracy of Gifts of Heaven. And so they'll think, oh, we got a perfect chance to snipe the Ziz right here. But really, it's a scatter pattern right here that nukes their whole army.
And then along similar lines, with Thunderstrike, the AI doesn't consider the AoE 6 component of the spell, so they can cause friendly fire from that as well.
Yeah.
So I think that just in terms of the scripting, both in terms of like what mages they're bringing and in terms of how they're set up to like basically handle evocation, that TNG's army is actually in a much better position. That said, TNG's army is also much more expensive, right? Because these are a huge pile of premium summons,
Right.
whereas everything on Pangaea side is just recruitables.
Right.
And they're not even bringing that many boosters, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. So let's see here. And a lot of this, Si and I haven't gone through and looked at the gems and scripts. Like if we were playing this game and going to fight one of these armies, we would be looking at it in a lot more detail. So we're kind of just going to narrate as it goes.
Oh yeah, there's mass regen.
Okay.
Storm. Okay, so he doesn't have a spare storm staff here, but he didn't need it. Also, one of the other upsides of the Zizzes is that they are storm flying.
Right.
So yeah, yet another good thing for them if you're using them as offensive evocation bait.
Now, these guys, okay, some of these already got their, I don't know what popped it, but they've already gotten their Fog Warriors popped.
No, what is that? Lance hit from the Cataphract, maybe?
What's that? Dryad Hoplite. Oh, these guys have magic weapons? Yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that'll do it.
So, okay, we've got a lot of buffs already from... Okay, we've got Wailing Winds up. We've got Darkness. We've got Rigor Mortis. We've got Relief being cast by Pangaea and by TNG.
Did Pan put up Army of Gold or Lead?
Yeah, we'll take a look at those in a second. Quagmire, Natural Storm. Both sides have cast Storm. So, he's got Army of Gold... Fog Warriors.
No, Army of Lead, it looks like.
Yeah, Army of Lead. Fog Warriors.
And Mass Regen.
Did he get Mass Regen as well? Oh, there goes Will of Fates.
Yeah, I saw Regen.
Mass Regen. Do we have Will of Fates on this side? We do not. Solar Brilliance has come up. That is being cast by Pan.
Oh,
that's also the Pan special.
It gets rid of darkness.
Right.
But yeah, it's a spell that only Pan is allowed to cast.
Right.
Because they have recuperation on everything.
Right.
I can see why Pan would think that they're winning this battle, actually. Just because even if So first of all, I think they expected their Soul Grinding God to do a little bit more damage in terms of killing the mages. But they knew that at the very least it was going to be doing gem burning and causing afflictions and damage to the enemy mage core with the hope of actually disrupting the army. Meanwhile, he's putting up Alt 9 while suspecting that TNG is not there yet, which means that he knows that he's going to have both Will of the Fates and Army of Gold on all of his units. But what we're seeing here is just a very small number of units, which are now going to start running into those cubes.
Right. And it does look like I don't see Will of Fates yet. This is what I keep kind of spastically checking for. And that's very, very important in this.
I don't think he's going to get it on Inchi side.
Oh, God. The behemoth sounds... Okay, thank God he's killed one of them. Please kill the next one. The squealed piggies. Okay, thank God the other one's dead.
Yeah, he's doing enslaved mind spam, which just isn't that lethal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think he's killing...
We haven't seen Gifts of Heaven
stuff quickly enough. Yeah, so I mean, the thing that we were worried that he really needed that Will of the Fates for is not in play at all.
Yeah, and Rigor Mortis is up, but we don't see a lot of spells. Pan's got Relief, but the only, let's call it very occasional spell from these Centaur Sages here. So it's really just an army battle at this point. And
yeah, he just doesn't have enough units.
And the cubes, oh no, they do get fatigue from Rigor Mortis. So
yeah, same reason that they do benefit though from Mass Regen and Will of the Fates.
But they benefit more from the enemy being fatigued out, because if they care a lot about this defense check, and if the enemy fails the defense check, they eat them. So they're going to be one-hit killing basically everything.
So the sages did do like one round of what is it, thunder strikes and gifts, which tells me that they're casting that only off script, which means that he was actually scripting them for enslaved mind.
He probably was thinking, like you were saying, the god was going to do way more damage. And this army was going to be like a cleanup crew, and he was going to try to steal some of the TNT shit.
Yeah, but on the other hand, the army that he'd moved in with that sailing thing, where he was like consolidating forces, and then when he pulled back, do you remember like
Yeah.
that one that we saw seen in the north? That one was also doing enslaved mind spam. So I think that that's just what he's using as his default communion spell.
So
I
this,
think that given that he has Will of the Fates on his side, though, that he really should be going for gifts and Thunderstrike instead.
yeah, I do too. I mean, if Will of Fates was up though, it really does take a lot of. I think if Will of Fates is up, Soul Slaying and Slave Minds may be a little better because those things both negate Will of Fates. But Gifts of Heaven gets cut in a quarter. It just as it turns out, this time he didn't have Will of Fates up because he gym baited it.
Yeah. But yeah, this was a very decisive win for TNG, in part because so many of those sages were exhausted. So he was able to actually kill 19 out of the 29.
He did lose. This was like an Air 3 Lich. So, or
Oh, the white
yeah,
mage?
or White Mage. Yeah. So this is a. Hopefully, he had enough commanders here. He probably got all the gear. But, this was a bit of a loss, but otherwise hardly lost anything.
Yeah, the other thing is that in TNG's case, the mage losses for Wailing Winds casters aren't nearly as crucial as they might be for another nation.
Yeah.
We already know that TNG has plenty of Air 2 Death 2 mages.
It was about 30. Dude, I'm telling you, my intuition for counting things by looking at them on the map, best
Pretty good,
best in Dominions. I'm just gonna say that. It's the only thing I'll lay claim to being the best at. I've gotten pretty good at just eyeballing numbers. Yeah, this is a super decisive win. Hardly cost them anything except gems. And this is the army that is. Oh, this was this army in Pan's North. So Pan's going to be losing ground around here.
Yeah, Pan just does not have the troops to replace that. They had the mages to replace that. They could easily bring up 30 more sages.
Yeah.
But they don't have the units behind it.
This just reaffirms to me that the move that TNG needed to have happen is they needed to sell that shit to Xibabla. Because if they sold it to Xibabla, they would build up the coalition. And then if they won this battle this turn, winning this battle, assuming they don't have to pull this army back to deal with Xibabla, is the key to all of this. Like, they get all of this as spoils from Pangaea, potentially.
Yeah, they could make up what they give away to Xibabla by taking it from Pan.
Right. And that would do two things. It would trigger people to go after Xibabla, because they've now got the Throne of Water and a bunch of other shit on Xibabla. And they get a bunch of shit out of it. And they don't really need the Throne of Water. Like, the plus defense is nice, but it's not...
They need to get it back eventually, I would say.
Well, to win.
But yeah, it's not.
But it's not...
They
They don't benefit from it the way Xibabla does or something,
They do like it. Like, we have been seeing him use those ancestor vessels as kind of like the elite core of his army.
Right. Oh, man. Pangaea was so... Oh, no. I was saying, like, they divided their army. There's not really much they divided here. Oh, so this is interesting. Didn't get Moss Body on all the right things.
Yeah, he's advanced casting his other mage there in order to try to keep buffing the cubes. And it almost worked. The problem is, that the cubes were just not in the way enough.
And they all popped
so
out
the
of the
mages
cube
died.
after. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've never actually seen things respawn out of a cube after combat like that. That was really cool.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Because most often, if the cubes are actually swallowing things regularly, then that means that they're winning.
Right. So yeah, that's this front. Okay. Oh. Umbral's first cubes.
This is what I would call an umbral-sided matchup.
Yeah.
Like, umbrals are, in fact, actually just very good against cubes, because even if you enlarge the cubes to be bigger, like, you make them a size 5 so they can actually squish the umbrals, they're ethereal, so 3/4 of the time they don't get swallowed.
Yeah. And the life drain works on them, because they're not lifeless.
Yeah.
So.
And the magic damage is armor piercing. So if they're trying, and it's untyped, so if they're trying to do like a moss body type thing, it's still going to be very effective.
So I was talking with Dark Wolf the other day, who is the Hydra here for Aaron, and Was it Dark Wolf? Oh no, it was Nick Knight. I was talking with Nick Knight, who, as you said at the very beginning, Nick Knight watched the first video, and you were like, Nick Knight's a Hydra, even if
He's not
he's not
Hydra.
officially.
Yeah.
He's like, I only saw 2 turns, so I'm not really a Hydra, but I have seen some of it. And I was like, yeah, I don't think the scale. He was saying that he didn't think there were a lot better nations to pick as the last drafting slot. And I was like, yeah, well, if he took Agartha, he probably should have taken a Bless. And he's like, yeah, I don't know. No, the plan was to just lay into Umbrals. And I was like, yeah, but you need like poison resistance on your mages to lead the Umbrals around. Anyway, point is that this Umbral thing has been a just super key part of how they were thinking about the nation. And I don't think I mean, it's obvious from how they're playing it, right? But it wasn't, I knew they were going to do it, but I didn't know how central it was to what they were thinking.
Yeah, they do have a Tomb Oracle out now, though.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen it in combat yet, but they summoned it in 28, one of their border forts.
You know what's really good against, I don't know if this, what's the banishment that gets the chance to kill, like straight up kill Long Dead? I mean,
That's Death.
the death one? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good against Umbrals.
But not that many people take a Death primary.
Right. So yeah, I mean, Agartha projecting power. Vediheim does have enough stuff in the region probably to just swoop in here and gobble them up, though. And the Pan army, which was here, has actually backed up. It sailed over here. This must be the one that sails.
It's nature that's the instant kill banishment.
Oh, okay.
And that one's a bit more common.
Excuse me. Oh, this is the boat.
The death one is, yeah. That's the boat.
So he boated from
check
here
his
to
name?
here. Yeah, I saw his boat captain.
Escorter boat.
Escorter boat. So he flew from here to here, and then it looks like the Mage Corps pulled back, but he pulled a different Mage Corps over here. So this is pretty fancy maneuvering.
Yeah, and that's one of the advantages of these super mobile center sages, is you can always bring a pile of mages to every battle.
Right.
Regardless of like where the army is.
Right.
That said, he really needs to go make another army now, given how many troops he lost.
Okay, so now let's go look and see what happened here. So small rating from Xibabla.
The fort storming is going to be at the very end.
Oh, the fuck? Yeah.
Skelly spam.
Ooh. Dodge the arrow hits as well. Oh, man. This Camazot.
Lucky boy,
Lucky
but
boy.
he's twice born,
Yeah.
so.
He's like he stole him. Oh, we already saw that. Okay.
Law rating.
So this is the throne, I think. This is the throne of water.
And now we'll see if the Camazot sub that he's bringing in have Wailing Winds casting or not.
Yeah, let's take a look.
It's going to be the Camazot. Okay, so that's... Nope.
Nope.
No Wailing Winds. Okay.
Very strange.
So then what's the Archdevil doing?
Heat from Hell is my guess.
That would make sense, yeah.
Well, I forget the bless for Xibabla exactly. Does it have...
They do have FR, yeah.
Yeah, they do. So this was a gym bait.
They got eaten too quickly to get him to spend gems.
Well, no, these guys have weapons of sharpness on them. That was...
Oh, true, yeah. But those are only temp gems. We didn't get
really?
to see...
Okay. Ah.
Yeah, he's just using bloodstones. We didn't get to see Wailing Winds, or not.
Yeah. Okay, but he did do
Sorry,
he did
not
do
Wailing
Rush of
Winds.
Strength or whatever you call it.
Yeah. Okay, so he spent some blood slaves, but I don't think that he cast whatever the... Oh, he probably did cast anti-magic, actually.
Oh, these
Okay,
were the...
so he-
wait, these might have been the guys that were in... This wasn't the throne fort. This was the fort he was going to have to give up. So these guys were toast anyway. He just put a few gems on and gem baited them, having them leave.
Makes sense.
So here's storming that fort.
Which is now empty, because the mages ran.
Right.
Yeah.
And then north thing, I think, this is the throne. So does he attack or not? Probably not.
Yeah. He's just checking out what the script is on the inside. This is a...
No.
yeah, so this is one of those things where
gem bait.
Yeah, it's a gem bait, but the gem bait is mostly just to
Ooh.
see what's being cast rather than to try to I mean, I guess burning the gems is like not a downside, right? He has to spend it, but he's going to be able to re-up this, right? So it's not like he's going to be setting up to make him unable to cast spells in the next fight the way that dropping on an army outside of a fort might do. This is basically just investigating what's in here because you'll recall a lot of this army was gatewayed in.
Right.
So Xibabla had no idea what was going to be in this fort.
Right.
So which is why he kind of had to check it. And then checking it with gems basically just means that you can also see what the script is.
Yeah. So he takes this fort. Oh, wait, no, this is a province. Okay, so he just gets one fort. So he's...
Right, and then
but raided a ton more.
And he now sees what's in that army. So he sees quite a lot, actually, including the time stop spell for the battlefield buffs. He sees the storm staff, and he might, or I think he should actually bounce off that fort unless he has a pile of additional mages to bring.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, this fort's now for free, and this fort's for free. So I guess you just go take these instead. Like, take all the free shit.
Look at Gath's army, though.
This one's moving up.
Yeah, that's what's interesting to me, because if Gath is trying to take TNG stuff, Xibabla just cut him off.
A more forward move, because this was into friendly territory. If he wanted to take TNG stuff, he would have attacked this province this turn. And then maybe angled down to take some of these. But he moved up this way, indicating maybe he's thinking about a war with Bettyheim. Did we get a message from them? We haven't.
There's a fairy queen in Gath's army on 19, which might be site search. It's the forest, which might be site searching, but given that there's also a Gadol there, it might be that he's actually planning on pushing into 44. And then, yeah, so a lot of the stuff that he's got there is like arguable. Like if you have a pile of zealots in a province that you're blood hunting, then, that's patrolling for blood hunting, right? So
Right.
like, he is in fact blood hunting 13 and 249, and you can see that on the unrest counters. But he does also have a pile of sacreds on the Vettiheim border there.
Yeah, if importantly, if Gath attacks Vettiheim, if that war breaks out, Vettiheim's one of the key players who can stab Xibabla, and so is Gath. And that makes Xibabla basically a free agent, where the only person that can stab them is Arithia. And I think if that happens, there's a chance that Xibabla just gets most of TNG, and then unless these guys get out of their war, Xibabla just wins. But
yeah, that's very plausible. And Vettiheim had kind of been trying to position themselves to be agile enough to respond to whoever gets ahead. But if they're bogged down fighting Gath Doomstacks, they're not going to be able to do that.
Yeah, I don't really love I don't think I love Vettiheim's like go with the flow thing so much. Like, it was good, I think, at the beginning, but I feel at this point it's like they're spiritually against these hyper-scaling blood powers, which, they're kind of like one. They don't scale as hard as Xibabla, though. But they're like spiritually against them, but they're not really doing anything. But I mean, maybe they will. But
their goal had basically been to not be the first to take that war, that they join a coalition to fight them.
Yeah. But, he could have been like, hey, if you get Arithia in on Xibabla, I'll join you and won't stab you, and then we'll go fight Xibabla. You could have told that to TNG.
Yeah, so the big thing, though, and the reason that they were, not doing that, is that Pangaea doesn't border Xibabla.
Right.
And Pangaea, as a free agent, needs to, or wants very much to fight someone. So if you're forming an anti-Xibabla coalition, and Pangaea is a free agent, they're going to backstab at least one of the coalition members. So you need to have Pangaea involved in something as well.
Yeah, and that does leave Gath out, too, so...
Yes. So you would most likely want to actually go for Gath first, just based on where they are on the map.
Right.
Because that's going to Pangaea technically has a one province border with Xibabla, but once they are fighting Gath,
but if they go against Gath, that doesn't stop. Gath war has nothing to do with TNG. So.
Oh yeah. I just meant in terms of the reason that if they were to form a coalition against one of the major blood powers for Vettiheim, it would make much more sense to go after Gath first.
Yeah, I mean, some of these things can be engineered with diplomacy. You can be like, okay, Pan, you go get free food, you eat Agartha, we'll go deal with Xibabla. If I were Pan and somebody told me that, I would be so happy. I'd be like, oh wait, y'all are gonna fight Xibabla for me, and I get to eat Agartha for free. You know, be the best thing.
I think that the best macro move, right, in terms of like grand strategy of who should be fighting who, for Vedheim right now would be to get Pangaea to back off of TNG, be like, okay, we had our battles, you win, we'll do a whatever it's called where you have a piece exactly where the borders are now, everyone goes back home. And then Pan plus Vedheim fight Gas.
But then but then you're making an assumption. The assumption is that Erythia and TNG can deal with Xibabla. And that probably could work. I mean,
Xibabla, yeah.
I mean, because like you said, Xibabla's really big and scary while these Doom stacks are running around. But if TNG can figure out how to wipe one of these stacks, or like once Demonic Cleansing comes out, which is not far away now,
they become manageable.
And Erythia certainly has it. So that might be a good bet. You might bet that TNG and Erythia can defeat Xibabla, and then Pangaea, Vedheim go on Gath, and then you get the two hardest scaling blood powers out of the game. So
yeah, and just positionally, you need to have Pangaea fighting someone, right? Like regardless of what's going on elsewhere in the game, Pangaea needs to be at war.
Right.
So if you want them to be on your side in this war, that's the only person you can team up against.
Yeah. Well, Pangaea could go after Agartha, but so yeah, I think the world. I think the worlds are. No, I mean that's a fair amount of spoils now. I think the worlds are either it's everybody against Xibabla, or for good game states for most of the players in the game, it's either everyone against Xibabla or everyone against. Everyone against Xibabla while Pan eats Agartha, or that split you were talking about, like Pan and Vedheim versus Gath, and then TNG Erythia versus Xibabla. That second one seems the most fun to me. I would like to watch that play out the most.
The question though is basically where Gath is going, because it might be the case that Gath is attacking Xibabla, right? We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
The only thing that we do know is that they're not moving towards TNG.
Do we see evidence of that over here? I mean, there are a lot of zealots over here. The Sayir stack. I think.
I have no idea what Gath is doing.
He's not actually really projecting very clear movement. I don't actually think this is a little concerning. He's probably going to blood hunt this or something. Like, I don't actually think he's going to attack Vedheim. This just looks like a little bit too low commitment. And maybe he does.
Well, yeah, what I was saying is a lot of that stuff on the border there with Vedheim, like he does have a bunch of sacreds, but they're also just like those are actual blood hunting provinces.
Right.
And you can see that in the unrest.
Yeah.
So that means that, like, theoretically, he could send, hit squads all across that border. But I think they also have a nap right now.
Yeah. All right. So I think we've been through the events of the turn. Position one side, who do you think it is? Pan, who might have been in it. They got smacked down a little bit. Nothing they can't recover from, but
So here's the thing with Pan, for me, is that I think that Pan, position-wise, in terms of their gold, their research, their ability to access late game via their god, that they're still very much viably in position one. But I don't think that the Pan player thinks that they are position one right now.
Right.
I think that he's scared of the blood powers, and he's playing very low commitment. Like, he's not putting a bunch of gear on his things. He's still trying to save up for something, goodness knows what. He's still investing heavily into massing mages over producing armies, and he's not bulking up on summons.
Yeah.
So he doesn't see himself in a place of, I can make lots of really great magically enhanced armies of, bulk summons and geared up mages and all that good stuff in order to, put together a real late game doom stack. He has the potential, right, in terms of by research and pathing and so on to do that, but I don't think that he knows how good his late game is right now, or how good his theoretical position is right
Actually,
now.
what you're saying is making me think of it in a little different terms. I think that the reason he's not putting gems in any of these armies is because he's saving up for some game-winning globals. That's what I'm currently thinking now that you said that. So in some ways, it actually enhances his position because he's doing so well with that. Well, like while he's building up a bank to put up a game-winning global.
Yeah, and he should actually be having a decent gem bank at this point, since while his gem income is significantly behind, or was, I should say, significantly behind TNG's, it looks very good now. Like if you check the gem income graphs,
Yeah.
um, he's going to be at yeah, he's number one right now in gem income.
Hmm.
And admittedly, some of that is shared globals, but he also hasn't been spending his gems, and certainly not to the extent that TNG has been.
Right. In terms of bank, it's almost certain he's number one at the moment for Jim Bank. Maybe Vettiheim. Vettiheim's been really peaceful too. But there's more area under the Pangaean curve than the Vettiheim curve. So here's the Pangaean curve. Here's the Vettiheim curve. And TNG's just been spending everything. So
Yeah.
So
I think,
research, these guys aren't done, but Pan passed Erythia. That's special.
Pan passed Erythia a couple turns ago. We actually called it out when that first
Okay.
happened. The only thing that Vettiheim has going for him over Pangaea, or I should say, one of the things he has going for him is blood, in that we know that he's been doing Vampire Lords, right?
Right.
We've seen those guys out, and that's going to accelerate his blood hunting as well.
Right. Yeah, I think. Okay. So position one, who do you say?
If not for the Diplo, because like you'd mentioned, this is a very active Diplo game where it is often going to come down to like people coalitioning the perceived leader. I would actually say that Xibabla is one or two,
Yep.
and that Vettiheim is the other one. The reason that I would put Gath below those two, even though, in terms of like actual income and certainly in blood income, they're probably approaching a number one position themselves, is basically just due to the immobility of their armies. That if Gath is in fact coalitioned themselves, it's like if they're fighting both Vettiheim and Pangaea at the same time, they're going to have a really hard time defending themselves.
Right.
Just because it's very hard for them to actually move those Seer armies around, and even harder for them to move mage masses around, just because they don't have that many battle mages in general.
Yeah.
So with those factors in play, it's easier for Gath to get out positioned than it is for either Vettiheim or Xibabla, both of whom have stealthy mages and that have mages spread across their empire. So wherever they need their mages, they actually can get their mage corps to the fight. And, even if they have to gateway troops, they can do that, whereas Gath doesn't have that flexibility. So I think that in terms of like their scaling position, as the game goes on, that basically logistical issue is going to get worse and worse, both because the distance that they have to travel is going to be bigger, and because the need for numbers of mages in battles is going to be bigger.
Yeah.
So Gath needs to start investing in very mobile mages of their own. I would say Vampire Lords or like other unique blood summons would be really good to help out with that. And they need to start switching over into doing more and more Shadim. I see that they have the King of Deeper Earth, which is actually very big, because that's a guy who can do battlefield support without the need for any boosters and such. So that's going to help them a lot. Having boosted Earth random mages so that they've got like E2s with both boots and a bloodstone will also help.
Yeah.
But they're going to need to basically get essentially caches of effective mages set up across their empire in order to answer this logistic issue that they're going to run into.
Yeah.
Between that and Massing Seer, I think that they could get into a position one, and their research is absolutely great. Between that and their size, they're doing just fine. So I would put them as like probably a number 3 behind Vettiheim / Xibabla. But I think that the way that the diplomacy is going to actually be fairly negative against Xibabla, because they're the one that's ringing alarm bells right now.
Yeah.
They're the one that people are pointing to and be like, this is the big scaling threat. And therefore, they're more likely to get coalitioned than either Gath or Vettiheim.
Yeah.
So those are my top 3. But the Diplo, I would say, kind of converse to how I'd put Gath at like a number 3 position. In Diplo is...
Okay, sorry. Sai was a little choppy there. We're back.
Yeah, dealing with internet issues. But yeah, so if you factor in the diplomacy, I would say you can probably flip Gath and Xibabla, just because Xibabla is the one against whom the diplomacy is being pointed right now, whereas Gath is going to continue to scale, and they can start addressing some of those logistic issues if they continue to be left alone, which would essentially make it Gath and Vettiheim in like a 1 or 2 slot, and Xibabla back down at number 3.
Yeah.
Then Pangaea, I would say, is definitely still a front runner, But they're in a position similar to where I was kind of pointing at Erythia a little bit ago, and which is actually still true in Erythia's case, where they really just need to start making armies. They need to start
Yeah.
doing bulk summoning. They need to recruit actual units, whether that's more cataphracts or more the Grove Guards, which they wanted basically just to be berserkers. But regardless of what they make, they need the units to go along with their Sage spam. And right now, they just don't have that set up yet. And that's really getting in the way of their showing a late game army. And Lucid was saying that like because they're not doing this bulk summoning yet or spending a bunch of gems on items, that they have the potential to be very scary just based on globals. But I think that if you're going to start doing all those globals and essentially ringing the alarm bells of like, oh my gosh, we've got Pangaea with Nexus or Pangaea with Gift of Nature's Bounty, then you need to have the armies already ready in order to fight a potential coalition if that's what's going to be coming.
Yeah. But yeah, like to keep Nexus up, you need an army. Now you could put Nexus up and then immediately start making your army and you get a nice rebate on it. So there's an argument for that, but it's risky.
It's a little hard to do that with sages because you want to start spamming cubes and each cube producer requires a water bracelet. So there's a little bit of like cost in terms of setup such that you want to kind of like start ramping it basically. So like, you don't want to make bracelets without dwarven hammers.
Yeah.
So, you kind of just like start steadily producing them. And then as you make the bracelets, you start summoning the cubes.
Yeah.
Right. So if they were already doing that, we would start to see the cube numbers ramping up.
Yeah.
Mechanical men, you can kind of spam. So that one's a little bit easier, like because you just get a bunch more of them. So if they're going for like that or living statues or actually they can't do gargoyles very easily. But if they're doing like some of the more massed summons, then I guess they could wait for Nexus. But I think that because so many of the really good summons are like small quantity, that you really want to get started with that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree there. I think too, speaking on the army thing, especially for Erythia, we were talking about some state where like Vediheim could bet that Erythia TNC could take Xibabla. Erythia doesn't really have much of an army, right? And Army of Gold, Will of Fates will go along, demonic cleansing. Maybe they can put together something that's going to kill Xibabla, but nothing here is really inspiring a ton of confidence that that's going to happen. And they kind of need that army to project. Like they need to, even if they're doing some like late game plan, like they're going to set up a wish farm and do Nexus and all of that, they need to keep the game state in bounds for that to pay off. And to keep the game state in bounds, you need to be able to make plays. And
yeah, I actually agree. I think that Erythia doesn't have the ability to basically decide a war right now.
Right.
I also honestly thought that Erythia was just vulnerable and that either TNG or Pangaea would kill them. But I guess the diplomatic state was such that they were never at risk of that.
And they have been building troops. Like, I'm sure if we look at the Erythia army graph, I can just tell there's way more. So, yeah, they've gone way back up in troops.
They've been building troops slowly. Like, look how long it took them to even get back up to where they were.
Yeah. But, I mean, they've got an army again. So, but I think the other thing that would factor in, I think it's one of the things that makes it really hard to decide on position one, is I think an optimal play here might be, so I think for some of these nations, the optimal play is going to be a Nexus split. And Erythia is a great candidate to split Nexus with because he's not very big. But like a Pan-Erythia Nexus split could be huge. Maybe these nations need to fight each other, but if they don't, it's a way to kind of reshape the whole thing. Or if TNC can get in and do a Nexus split with somebody, that could be pretty nice. But I feel like a Nexus split is kind of like a wild card in this whole thing if two of the players decide to do that together.
Pangaea would almost certainly be one of the partners in that, I'd say.
Yeah.
Both because of their size and because of their scaling concern.
Right. So I think that's if the Nexus split happens, I think you're right. I think Pangaea is one of the best people to be in it. And that probably, if they can do a Nexus split, I think the Pangaea position stays at number one.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah.
They do need to have, they do need to be able to take fights though. And right now, none of the armies that they're putting together seem to be able to win against even a TNG Doom stack. So I would not want to bet on them against like a Gath Doom stack, or even a Vediheim Doom stack at this point.
Right. And yeah, I think the thing is with Xibabla too, it's like it matters so much which way diplomacy goes. If Xibabla, one way to look at it, like for position 1, 2, 3, is how many mistakes do you need in order to like win the game? How many mistakes can you make and still win the game? And
Agreed. Yeah. Xibabla's running a low vigor build.
right, they can't make many mistakes. But if people don't react to them, they also can snowball very, very quickly. So it's kind of like they can't make many mistakes, otherwise, they lose an army and they get coalitioned and then they die. But if other players make mistakes, they can take advantage of it much more fast than other nations potentially. So
Yeah. Their economy, though, is interesting in that it's not just limited by like golden gems, but by how many blood mages they have to hunt.
right,
So if they get a bunch of territory very quickly, that doesn't instantly become additional power, right?
Right.
Because they still have to saturate that land.
yep, that's a good point. Yeah, I think it's really hard to say. Goddamn, people need to make peace with TNG now and make that's the one thing. It's like Pan, like let go of this. Vedheim wants to let go. Pan probably wants to let go. Pan's not going to gain anything more out of it. All they've done through this coalition is empower Agartha, which fine, and empower Xibabla. The main thing they've done is empower Xibabla and knock TNG down a peg.
Honestly, I would say the big thing they did is knock TNG down a peg because while Xibabla did get a bunch of territory, it's not that much, right? Like they haven't gotten the Throne of Water yet, and they're going. If they get the Throne of Water, I would say that Xibabla's empowered dramatically, but check their gem income.
I mean, it's huge.
Went up a bit.
But yeah, I mean, some of it's hidden behind the throne. But I mean, yeah, I mean, they're up 30% in every graph. Maybe not income as much, but
yeah. And
I mean, look where Xibabla was a few turns ago. Just like this is like 10 turns ago. They're up 50% from 10 turns ago. Now a lot of this was Arco vulturing.
Yeah.
But
not vulturing. They were the ones that fought Arco.
True.
And that paid the price in sacred count to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, if they get the Throne of Water, then Xibabla, I would say, it has in fact been empowered greatly from this. But they still need to kill the army that's in there, and they haven't shown that they actually can do that yet.
Right. And I think they're just going to bounce on it. But that remains to be seen. I think they just say, okay, thanks for gatewaying all that shit, and we'll just go somewhere else.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's the play because they don't have the ability to kill a doom staff like that right now. Like especially into like a choke point with the storm staff. Xibabla can't beat that right now.
Yeah.
Or they can, but it's weird. What they would want to do is bring all their air mages and then do storm power on TNG Storm, and then spam air elementals.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, they just do Wailing Winds. It's.
I don't know if they can cast that yet, actually.
I mean, come on, they can cast it. Okay, maybe not.
Yeah, their research is still really, really bad.
That's really bad. Dear God, y'all kill Xibabla now while you can. It's gonna get so much worse. If he doubles his research, holy shit. But yeah, so maybe he doesn't. But I don't think TNG can know this. And I think if you're playing TNG, you have to just assume he has it. And if you assume he has it, you can't take the fight. So I don't know. That's what's weird to me. Is I think like the optimal move for Xibabla, since if Xibabla doesn't have Wailing Winds, is to just skip that fort and go somewhere else. But the optimal move for TNG is if you don't know if Xibabla has Wailing Winds or not, is you peace out. You get the fuck out of there. You do Vortex of Returning. Yeah. So it's a really weird situation where it's like both players should skip that battle.
Since we have the turn delay before we see it from the Mentor channel, the Fulix comment on the TNG army in that fort is, "This is a future Fulix problem."
Okay, so he's skipping.
So he's not gonna try to kill that right now.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, all right. So I think that's it. Closing thoughts, Si?
Yeah, very exciting turn. No, I mean, this was both a very exciting turn in terms of like the battles that we saw, and it was also great in that we start to see how the late game is going to develop while we still don't have a clear single front runner. Like you've got Xibabla, Vedheim, Gath, Pangaea, of course, and even potentially Arithia and TNG on a comeback that can all win the game still.
Yeah.
Like this is not even like a, bilateral state. This is a state where there's a huge number of potential winners.
Yeah. I think my closing thought will be this. I think the move for TNG is they need to form a deep. I think for them, they're only because TNG needed to ride this momentum, and this coalition's like totally taking all the wind out of their sails.
I think that's what it was meant to do, honestly,
Right.
is basically just stop the TNG snowball.
Right. What they need to do, I think, is just form a very deep alliance with Erythia and plan on putting Nexus up together. If they do that, they can probably deny it from Pan. I think that's the best move for both those players. And at the same time, commit to putting down Xibabla. So that's what I think should happen, but we'll see.
Yeah, that depends on Pan cooperating, though. In not fighting TNG anymore, I mean.
Right. But Pan is look, Pan's in this to just like have people not focus him or something. Pan isn't gonna do much anymore. Like he's not gonna conquer TNG himself. And if Erythia backs out, then and Vedheim's already basically backed out, there's not really anybody left to fight TNG. It's really just Pan. I mean, it could be like Pan and Xibabla versus TNG and Erythia. Maybe. I mean, that's not bad for Pan. But then it's like people might be mad that you're siding with Xibabla. So maybe Gath turns on Pan. I don't know.
Yeah, that's starting to get
Very hypothetical.
very far out there. And also like very dependent on like what the individual other players think.
Right.
So it's very hard to read the tea leaves
Yeah.
there.
But it's fun doing so. So anyway, we'll leave you with it. Put it in the comments. What do you think the best move for all the people involved in the TNG coalition are? What do you think and you don't have to answer for all of them, but what do you think the best move for TNG is? What do you think the best move for Pan is? What do you think the best move for Erythia is? What do you think the best move for
The players are
Vedheim?
going to be way ahead by the time this is posted.
Yeah, so y'all don't weigh in. But for people just spectating. All right. Thank y'all so much for watching. And Sai, as always, thank you so much for casting.
Yeah, thanks for hosting.
All right.
A lot of fun as always.
Yeah. All right. Take care, folks.